Hello and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. We are here today to bring you the MACtion. The MAC schedule was released last week, and we have some thoughts about it. I'm joined today by Omar, a recurring guest here. We've had him on a few times. He is a writer for By the Belt, formerly known as Hustle Belt, writing UMass articles for them, and of course, just a fellow college football enjoyer. Omar, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me, Justin. Always a joy to be on here, even when I'm not singing about baby back ribs like the last time. I'll try not to
That
make
was the
any,
thing that did happen.
yeah, I'll try not to make any bold predictions this time. I thought I was safe with that UAB one, but I was not. But yeah, I mean, I'm just excited for another year of the MAC. Honestly, excited to be covering UMass for By the Belt, and overall, just like you said, college football fan, just covering college football with Redshirt sports in general. I mean, I just wrote about Chicago State's stadium deal, which isn't great. Rooting for them in that situation, but they did not do themselves any favors. You can read about that there, but I'm just excited just to dig into the MAC. I mean, not even week by week, but team by team, and just see, just get everyone watching and just get each other just excited in April. Yeah, on April 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. This is for our show. It's very much a hometown league for us. As you can tell by, I have all sorts of back stuff in my background here. Um, yeah, so this is a league that we love, and just very excited to dive into their schedule in particular, because I think there's a lot of interesting things. Like Sacramento State joining the league is going to be a very interesting headline that we'll touch on throughout. We'll be jumping team by team, so we'll start with Akron, we'll be ending with Western Michigan, and we'll kind of get some thoughts here in between. So let's go ahead and kick this off with the Akron Zips. Omar, what is your first thought when you see Akron's schedule?
So looking at Akron's schedule, so there's certain teams in this league. The non-conference scheduling philosophies of group of five teams differ, of course, with different priorities. We'll talk about Kent State later. But Akron seems to fall under the category of a school that's like just trying to pay the bills with non-conference. And it's interesting because they have two Power Four teams. They have Wake Forest and Minnesota. They also have a very difficult game at UNLV, but that one is at InfoCision Stadium, which is probably the best opponent they've had in a while since Iowa State, as we had just learned before going to air that Akron hosted Iowa State in 2017. That I had no recollection of that game. But with that being said, with this non-conference philosophy, you look at Akron, they can easily start 1-3. And it would be a real shame because I think they're really building some momentum there with Joe Moorhead. But the thing is, once they'll get into conference play, the margin for error is razor thin. And they have games against Central Michigan, at Central Michigan. They got Ohio, they got Western Michigan, and Buffalo can be either good or bad. I don't know if I said Miami of Ohio too, but the margin for error is razor thin. And this is a school that you kind of wish that they got a more favorable draw in conference play compared to the next school that we're going to talk about in alphabetical order. But that's just my thought, honestly. Akron has great momentum, and I really hope that the administrators just take this year for what it is. I hope that they gauge the MAC, Akron's play in the MAC more than their non-conference play, because it just sucks that they're having this year with this type of schedule, non-conference schedule, with the momentum that they've had. But I mean, I'm excited, honestly. Jordan Gant is returning at running back. I would have thought, honestly, when I was doing research, I thought he was gone, honestly. I thought he went to the Power Four, had an amazing year running the ball, but he stayed. He's there to build. Joe Moorhead is an offensive genius, is a spread genius. So just excited for this year. I'd have to say the game I'm looking forward to the most is that UNLV game, though. That's his chance for a signature win. And I don't think that Akron will be out-traveled in their own stadium, because UNLV fans don't really travel that well either. So could be a wild crowd of 10,000 at InfoCision to see one of the better games of the Group of Five non-conference year.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really good thoughts there. Yeah, and potentially Reese Poffenbarger finally gets his chance with the Zips after he's been on the unfortunate side of going against two top quarterbacks when he transferred from Albany. Um, But yeah, I look at that UNLV game too. That's like one of the first things I circled. And by the way, we are going September 26th. Keep that day in mind. Like we are going to be talking about that date a lot on this show. It's a very cool, like cross-sectional game. And really, I think this is only the third time that UNLV has come to Ohio. They had a game against Ohio State in the 2010s, and then last year played at Miami, which was an absolute thriller. I was at that game. And now, second year in a row, they're making a trip to Ohio. So definitely a very funny thing that they're doing that twice. But yeah, that one's going to be very interesting. You kind of touched on it there. Like the schedule is not forgiving, especially early. You've got three of your first four conference games all on the road. I don't like that. That's going to be really difficult. And of course, I think the other part is like you have Robert Morris, nice little regional game there, not too far away. And UNLV, you got those. Those are your only Saturday games. Akron does not get a single Saturday conference home game. So I know that's gonna be really disappointing for Zips fans for sure. But and definitely not favorable to the attendance of Inposition Stadium for sure.
Yeah, and we were talking about that before we went live, how like the things are going in the right direction, but the fans just need to come for Akron, and it always seems like I feel like the defining image of MACtion in this era where now people feel like it's like the conference is digging into is continuing to increase sunk costs with MACtion. I feel like the defining image is just any game where Akron's is playing at home at Infocision Stadium because you got the double decks, you got maybe 1,000 people in the stands, 3,000. I mean, they say 6,000 are there, but we know that athletic departments puff up numbers, attendance numbers all the time. But that's just crazy. I did not like look at the dates that closely and realize that they only had two Saturday MAC games in general. And like, wow, that's just that just sucks. Honestly, like I feel like Akron fans are getting screwed. Like this is the year that they make the leap, but they have a hard schedule and they have a very like suboptimal just placement of their games.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of kind of disappointing for them to be honest. But still, I think if they can overcome having to play in the road and stuff, I mean, they won some surprising games on the road last year, so they're certainly capable of it. But yeah, that'll definitely be something they need to overcome. And of course, cannot mention Akron without saying, Akron, please bring the kangaroo logo back. That is so great. And you got rid of it for nothing.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan. The kangaroo is cool, but I'm more of a fan of the Jason Taylor drop shadow A. That's my favorite Akron logo personally. Like I have to say, like
Oh,
that one. When I think Akron, I think of either the drop shadow A or the flying A. You know, the '80s graphic design with like all the horizontal lines to give the illusion that something's like coming at you. Those are the two Akron logos I think of.
did they do like a drop? Didn't they do the drop shadow with the kangaroo at one point? Right? Am I
I
making
think
that
so.
up?
I think
Okay.
so. I'd have to look, but I think so.
Yeah. Like I don't know. Like it's the only FBS program for kangaroo. Why would you get rid of that, guys?
Yeah, they should play VMI too because VMI has their own kangaroo mascot again. So I mean, hey, VMI Akron in Australia. I mean, let's make it happen.
Yes, there we go. More random neutral sites games that we do not need. Oh, that would be a fantastic one. But
Foreshadowing.
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump to Ball State. The Cardinals, in year two under their regime, what is your first thought when you look at Ball State's schedule, and really just your takeaways in general?
So Ball State, I'm actually like really surprised with how much this program has struggled because it seems like when I was a kid, it seemed like the era with Nate Davis, who's still slinging the ball in the indoor football league for the San Diego Strike Force. I mean, it's amazing. If you all you Mac fans out there, just check out the Strike Force when they play on Yahoo Sports Network for free. Nate Davis is still doing it. He still looks sharp. But it seems like that golden era was longer than it actually was, and I mean, I'm just surprised that Ball State hasn't reached many bowls since I think it was like 20. I want to say after Keith Wenning left was 2013. I think they've only been to three or two bowl games. I think it's just been two bowl games since then. And I think that's just a lead in to say that Ball State's schedule is very favorable compared to, say, Akron, because you look at conference play as it is. Sacramento State, I'm not going to say that they're going to be bad, but they're an unknown entity, and then no one thinks they're going to come and take the league by storm. No one thinks they're going to beat Ohio or Western Michigan, and the MAC is already a league with great parity. So they get Sacramento State, they get UMass, they get Buffalo, which is a swing game. They get Kent State, which Kent State's improving, but not quite there yet under Mark Carney. That's a long build. That's a slow build. We all know that. So that's four very winnable games right there, along with Liberty on the road, a team that is in a rebuild. Honestly, I don't know if Coach Chadwell is I don't know if Coach Chadwell is actually stepping aside this year, if I'm not mistaken, due to a health issue. So that's another winnable non-conference game. So we're looking at six very winnable games with their FCS game. So I think Ball State can, I guess, just make like this is just an optimal year. If Akron had Ball State's schedule, I think Akron would make a bowl, but Ball State has an opportunity here just to kind of, just redirect some of the gloom that's accompanied that program over the past few years.
Yeah, Ball State is a very interesting program. Like it just seems like they they catch lightning in the bottle every once in a while and have an excellent year, and then otherwise kind of tend to struggle a little bit. Like 2020 was another year where they caught lightning in the bottle. I think they lost their first game that year in that weird partial season, and then immediately won the rest of their games and finished in the top 25. So you could tell this program can have those moments, but definitely this is one of the more in this era of NIL, like this is one of the programs with more of financial limitations than maybe you'll see for other MAC programs, just because Ball State is kind of by nature more of like a teacher school, so there's less disposable income to play for athletes and to pay for athletes and everything. So that kind of makes it a little bit more of a challenge for them. But generally, it's going to be can they get that group of guys to stay together for a little bit and really go on that run. Before I continue, I could see you have something point.
Oh, I was just interested. I didn't know that, honestly. That was great to know that. I didn't know Ball State was mainly a teacher school. You just blew my mind because it shows how much like goes into the NIL age. Like that honestly just made my day, just like finding that out. Honestly, like I was like really astonished because I had no idea about that teacher's point.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure I drop this throughout because obviously, being a MACtion guy, like I know exactly like what all these schools are like. So yeah, I'll have a few more fascinating tidbits as we go along here. But yeah, looking at the schedule, Ohio State's going to be a tough one to open the season, but you get past that one, and really it doesn't get too bad. Like, yeah, it's kind of rough having three road games in your non-conference schedule. The Stony Brook Seawolves are a fantastic name, but they may not be as much of a pushover as you want them to be. So that one, just got to make sure to keep an eye on that. I did do the research here a moment ago on Jamie Chadwell. Whatever was going on apparently is okay. He returned to coaching last week. Thankful to hear that for him. But yeah, I remember like seeing a tidbit about that, and it was up in the air for a moment. But yeah, still, like you said, though, Liberty is kind of rebuilding after a really disappointing season last year. Northwestern is not super intimidating. They're going to be the second team to play in Northwestern's new stadium. That'll be fun. And overall, like you've got a pretty decent, like you have at least three home games, and of course, the last home game on Saturday is going to be everyone's favorite, the Ball Sack Bowl. Ball State's announcement said that they're going to make it some sort of fun rivalry. Now, how you're going to put that together while also making it appropriate, we'll have to wait and see what goes on there. But yeah, that was definitely a very interesting tidbit. Of course, I think I like that Ball State avoids playing Western Michigan. That one's definitely a big one to avoid. Even avoiding Eastern Michigan could potentially be favorable of how much they have back. So yeah, there's a lot to like here, and definitely that window exists for Ball State to continue to move forward. Of course, October 3rd, gotta watch that one because Ball State, Muncie, Indiana has been a nightmare spot for Toledo for a while.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. Just bring that up. That was one of the more random results of the season because I think Ball State went to the Glass Bowl and beat them last year, if I'm not mistaken. I know. The MAC was all over the place. There's a bunch of upsets. I think it was Western Michigan that Ball State beat. I know Ball State pulled an upset last year. I forget against who.
It was Ohio. And like
Okay, yeah.
Ohio was like the team in the MAC, and they were the talk of the town, Parker Navarro and everything, and they were even competitive against Ohio State. It was like, man, Ohio might not go. They beat West Virginia too. Ohio might not go down the rest of the year, and then Ball State upset them in Muncie.
Okay, I remember. Yeah.
Overall, this is a team that had a huge. They were massively different at home compared to on the road last year. They were very
Okay.
good at home, struggled on the road. Which actually you mentioned the Western Michigan game. That game was on the road. They lost like 42-0, and
Okay.
that score very much defined how the game went.
Yep, never mind then. I will say though, one more note that I liked about the schedule. This is one day I actually did pay attention to, compared to just my regular approach in doing this. But the gap between Ohio and Central Michigan to end the season, I think that's huge. Honestly, getting 10 days of rest before Central Michigan, or 11 days, yeah, 10, 11 days of rest before Central Michigan, because Central Michigan, we know that they're a physical team, and Ball State's probably not going to come. Like, if that was any other scenario where Ball State was going to just play them with a week or even 6 days beforehand, I mean, Ball State's probably not coming out of the game 100%. So a chance to heal against the most physical offense in the conference is huge. And that one could be closer than people think, just for that reason too. I love Matt Drinkle and love Central Michigan, but that one kind of evens the playing field for Ball State and Central Michigan. So I'm honestly watching out for that one.
That's actually a really good call out, and yeah, my bad because then I misspoke earlier. Actually, that means that Ball State has 4 of their 5 home games on Saturdays, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like it really, there's not a lot of, we'll probably touch on this a few times, but there's really not many teams that have a true bye week this year. They have, I think I typically call them half buys where you have like 10 days off. But at the very least, Ball State gets 2 half buys, which can be a very helpful.
The whole max schedule is just weird in terms of rest, but I guess when the stars align like that, and you get 10 days before your final game of your season just simply doesn't end a week early like Akron's did last year. I mean, it's definitely a win.
Oh man, like we're still closer to the end of college football season last year than I believe compared to when Akron season ended compared to the national championship game. I think there was less days between Akron's last game and the national championship game than right now to the national championship game.
It's unbelievable, unbelievable stat. Like, I honestly forgot that they had ended the season so early by the time the national championship rolled around.
November 18th was the Akron season ended. Unreal. But yeah, that takes us to our next team here, Bowling Green, my alma mater and one of my favorite teams to talk about, obviously. Year 2 under the Eddie George era, and I mean, just saying up front, like we knew this before the max schedule releases out, but they have an absolute grind of a schedule this year. What are your first thoughts when you look at it?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't know why this isn't funny, but as a fellow Tarleton State victim, week 1 victim, I mean, they have a real chance to start the year 0-4, honestly. It's funny now when you look back, but I honestly thought Army was going to go 1-11 or 2-10. What a wild first 2 weeks of the season that was. But yeah, like you said, like you hit it exactly. And honestly, with Miami as well, like there's a real possibility to go 1-4, if not 0-5. And it's tough. It's tough because Bowling Green showed signs of being able to contend last year. I mean, of course, with which I'm sure we're going to talk about later on with the I forget the highway, the Toledo game. I'm
Battle of
mixing
I-75.
I-75 because like yeah, there's the Battle of I-25, which is New Mexico State versus New Mexico. I should know these highways off the top of my head because when I lived in El Paso, I drove them all the time. And then the Battle of I-10, which is New Mexico State and UTEP. Yeah, like with that, I know we're going to talk about that, but yeah, like Bowling Green showed a bunch of potential last year, and it's just a shame. I feel like it's the same thing like with Akron, where Bowling Green isn't in as much of a need to take that next step for the sake of their fan base and program. Like, yes, Eddie George is in his second year, and Eddie George, I want to say it was his third year at Tennessee State when he really started to get things rolling. 2025, his fourth year when he really started to get things rolling out there in Nashville. So I don't think the pressure is too much on them, but yeah, this schedule is just absolutely brutal. Like I honestly did not think that Bowling Green was the type to schedule multiple Power Fours in a year, but I know that the Iowa State game is a home and home, so I guess that's just the way that the cards kind of fell, where they have to if in order to squeeze in Iowa State, they had to squeeze them in this year to get the home game next year. But you say it's a grind of a schedule. I think even then, there's still a chance for them to recover and even, I guess, maybe not make a bowl, maybe salvage their season. But because they got Sac State, they got Ball State, they got Buffalo. You start the season off 1-4. I think you're back at 500 with those 4 games, and then you have Kent State, and then you got, as much as I hate to say it, you got UMass. You got your bingo free spot, and until otherwise proven, UMass is the free bingo spot for the rest of the MAC. I think this is a team that can go 6-6, just despite the start of the season they have.
Yeah, that opener is going to be absolutely key, and I still cannot believe it because like I'm pretty sure like it was within a week of when Tarleton State did it to Army. And I was like, no, guys, why did we do this? Why did we schedule this team? Why would you do this? Like, this is not an FCS opponent. This is a team that is ready to jump to FBS now and probably will be playing at FBS in 2027. I don't get it. I do not get why they did that. But yeah, that one's going to be really rough. And like you said, like, yeah, starting with Miami on the road as well for MAC play is going to be pretty tough. If they can win that opener, maybe pull a surprise elsewhere, then you're looking like you're in good shape. And I think this program is a pretty good position going on defense. Like they have developed players very well on that side of the ball in recent years. And then now you have, I want to make sure I don't butcher his name, Novosad, the Oregon transfer quarterback. If he pans out and, like is actually like what his recruiting tutelage was, not like, hopefully not another Ty Thompson situation, but like he could end up being pretty good. Um, but yeah, like I love the homecoming game against USF. That is another game on September 26th that I'm looking at. Like I want to go to that game again. Like this week will be coming up a lot because there are a lot of cool MAC home games that week, and this is another one of them. I believe will be the first time they've ever played. And obviously, I went to Bowling Green. I have some family members who went to USF, so that's a pretty cool little thing there. But then this is the other thing that really draws my attention, and this is going to require definitely a broader discussion. After we saw two full stadiums on Saturdays the last 2 years, the Battle of I-75 is back on a Wednesday. So before I give my thoughts on this, you could probably tell by my tone and how I'm wording that, you could probably get an idea of what my thoughts are going to be. But what are your thoughts on having these rivalry games on weeknights? It's someone that I like your perspective because you're someone that, other than writing for UMass, like you don't have a ton of affiliation with the MAC. You're more of a general college football enjoyer that likes to watch all the teams. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so like I was watching that one as part of my noon kind of whip around coverage. I think I tuned into that one after Army had ended their game early, as that often happens in the noon slot because Army runs the ball a lot. So like, and I could not believe what I was seeing in terms of atmosphere because I'm so used to just like locking in on the rest of the MAC other than UMass. like towards like of course when MACtion happens when they're front and center, right? Like I'll keep tabs on them early in the season. If there's a marquee non-conference game, I'll watch it. But I was in disbelief like what I was seeing in this Mac Stadium, and that's actually how I learned that this was like such a huge rivalry. Like I knew about the Rocket pointing to Bowling Green and everything. I was like, oh, that's just it's not that serious. But then I saw that and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is what Mac football could be. And I think your concerns are very warranted. And I think this next television deal is going to be just what either makes or breaks the MAC, I think, because you have there have been multiple warning signs for the MAC to either reverse course and maybe like convince them that weeknight MACtion isn't the sunk cost that they think it is. Where of course NIU is the first one, just going to the Mountain West and joining the Horizon League. I think anytime someone proves that there's a path and it's a very viable path, I think like the warning signs are already there. Which is why like when Northern Illinois ended up making more money by essentially just leaving the MAC and splitting up their operations, it was a huge warning flag. Then the next warning sign was Ohio flirting with the Sun Belt. The fact that Ohio would rather be a part of a conference where they have to travel to Louisiana, to Georgia and whatnot as a more viable option than the MAC, just based off everything, is another warning sign. I think the final one is this one, where, like you said, like they saw, like the conference saw 2 straight full Saturdays, and they decided to make it a weeknight game. And now both schools are taking the step where instead of we're non-conference play should be a showcase for the MAC. Of course, we have the Black Flag. We haven't mentioned the Black Flag yet with the Power Conference games, but I mean, they're willing to reduce 2 opportunities really for both Bowling Green and Toledo, one each, to showcase the conference, just to play each other and generate ticket revenue. It kind of shows them like how unimportant the media revenue is in comparison to having that event. So I'm really concerned for how the MAC would respond to this and the fact that it's gotten to this point, because this frankly is just a huge indictment of the midweek model for the MAC. And like, as far as I know, like Conference USA doesn't do this. Not that there's any rivalries to build, but I believe that the only time that they made in the 2 years that New Mexico State and UTEP were rivals, I feel like the battle of I-10 wasn't a weeknight game. They didn't do that to the Battle of I-10. They didn't do that for again, like I'm reaching at straws here for some of these weeknight games. I feel like they didn't do that to Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee these past couple of years. So I'm just really nervous for the MAC's future just with this situation, because I feel like it is another just crack in the armor for the conference.
Yeah, for sure. And I think really there's a few points here. Like, for one, I mean, again, like you said, like the attendance of the game and everything, even being noticed elsewhere outside of MAC country, like the Battle of I-75 really could and should be the biggest event in Northwest Ohio. It's a very populated region that doesn't have a ton of major sports. And that game, I mean, for 2 years, that game was the event in the area. And it was electric. Like that is huge. That is huge for the MAC to have your event as the centerpiece for a region. And it's kind of hard to believe that you're going to pass that up by reducing it to a Wednesday. So that is definitely the first thing. And I think also, like, even if you want to keep the weeknight model going, which I do think the main value of the weeknight is, of course, the television exposure. I don't think you're reducing that by much at all by playing games that are not rivalries during those weeknight games. I don't think a lot of the people that are tuning in, either don't know as much about the rivalries and aren't too worried about it, and a lot of them just want to enjoy the MAC. They just want to see the teams play. They aren't too worried about like what the storylines are or anything. And so I don't think you need to put though. I don't think those are they are not worth the price that you're paying to not have those on a Saturday. Like this one, the Battle of I-75, we'll talk about later, like the Battle of the Bricks, the Battle of the Wagon Wheel, Western Michigan, Central Michigan, like those are all very huge, intense rivalries that can pack a stadium. And I think those need to be preserved for a Saturday where everyone can make it there. And it's really just like a full showcase for the Mac. And then, try to work with the television partners. Like, I mean, probably a lot of times it's going to be, CBS Sports Network or ESPNU, and that's fine. Playing on weeknights is a guarantee you're not on those channels, anyways. But I would say, work with them on that. And that way, weeknight MACtion is kind of like your advertisement a little bit. It's like, okay, you see these teams play and stuff. Um, but, next year when they come back around, they're playing the rivalry games in October. Check this out too, because this is going to be really intense. Like, you're going to get to see the Battle of I-75. You're going to get to see the Battle of the Bricks, which I think a lot of people on the basketball side learned how intense that rivalry is when that game caught headlines. But yeah, I think that's where I stand with that now. Is I feel like you're selling yourself short when you're missing out on that element of this is the biggest game in that area.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And I know you'd mentioned that before, how like in our chats beforehand, how MACtion essentially like it doesn't have to be the biggest rivalries because like we're talking about like we talked about before we went live today, like there really aren't that many rivalries in the MAC like left, like huge rivalries. I mean, it's not a stretch to say that the Battle of I-75 is a bigger rivalry than the Battle of the Bricks, like you said, or the Michigan MAC Trophy, really, where it's like, in my mind too, like people just want football. The evidence of that is Conference USA, where you have Kennesaw State playing Sam Houston, like two schools with very little in common, but they're in a conference together, and the conference has them play on Tuesday, Wednesdays in October just to fill TV time. So I think the MAC is a bit misguided in its approach, and I really hope that they at least heed this morning. And in 2027, the Battle of I-10 is on a weekday, on a weekend, on a weekend, on a Saturday. So the conference not only doesn't frustrate its members, but also doesn't lose two opportunities to shine in non-conference play. Because I don't think that the College Football Playoff Committee, if it came down to it, say you have like a 12-1 Bowling Green, a 12-1 Toledo, compared to say 12-1 American champion, or say the American has a down year, because in reality, like the American or Pac-12 would have to have a down year. But if it came down to it, and the extra data point for non-conference play is either it's a game against a team you already beat in conference, compared to say the Sun Belt champion James Madison at 12-1 with one Power 4 loss, but they have wins against two other Power Conference teams compared, or two other Group of 5 teams compared to Toledo or Bowling Green having a win against one other Group of 5 team and an FCS team, and their other win against their I-75 rival. I think that the playoff committee is going to pick the Sun Belt just because of that different data point. So I think it's just second, third, and fourth order effects that I guess we just keep coming up with that shows like, hey, this is a very bad problem. Honestly, and that's really all I have to say to put a bow on this.
Yeah, completely. I mean, yeah, I couldn't even put that better myself. It's not like you still can't put like you can still put some pretty good games on weeknights too. Like I would say, like you've hit the model pretty well with some of the weeknight games we have this year. Like Miami, Western Michigan, the rematch of the MAC championship, putting that on in prime time. Like those are not rivals, but having that game on the weeknight is definitely going to be an intriguing watch for a lot of college football fans. So there's still games that you could put there if you have to for the TV deal and everything. But yeah, it's time to get the rivalries off of there.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, honestly. And we'll talk later too, just about the poor placement of some of these rivalry games in general, in terms of like when they are, not exactly like the specific date, but the week they take place. But I just think the MAC just leaves much to be desired with this.
Yeah, agreed. Um, we go now to the Buffalo Bulls. Buffalo coming off of a season last year where it didn't quite go as well as expected, but they're looking to rebound. What are your first thoughts when you look at Buffalo's schedule?
First off, why are they playing two FCS schools? I apparently missed that with the schedule release, like that they were playing two FCS schools, which any time as an Army fan, like And Army did this because they had to as an independent. Like I just think this is just poor scheduling by the athletic department because you're just making it harder for your fans to be happy for I mean, honestly, to make more money by making a bowl game. Like you're paying for another game and like I don't know if it was because of a scheduling issue where they couldn't schedule someone. I mean, hopefully they get proven wrong because they've had some outstanding linebackers up there in Western New York. But I just think with the pieces they lose on offense as well, Taquan Roberson gone, Alj Henderson gone, Victor Snow gone. I think this is just a tough year for a rebuild. The only thing I'll say is like I just mentioned, just about the specific placement of some of these games. I would just swap out UMass for Akron. Honestly, just put Akron in mid October and put UMass on Black Friday for the flagship cup. I mean, the schools obviously want to start something there. They want to start a rivalry. They got a sponsorship. They got the Cat sponsorship last year. It makes sense for the two Northeastern schools in the conference. I just think the league is kind of undermining this rivalry by placing it just in a random Saturday in October instead of on Black Friday, which was we were talking about before we went on air. There's two games on Black Friday. One's going to be on CBS Sports Network. The other one's going to be probably on ESPN2 or ESPNU. Like linear TV exposure on Black Friday, that would do huge wonders for this rivalry. And the MAC is honestly, I don't even know what's going on with the MAC schedule makers, really. Like, there's just so many questionable choices. I feel like I'm watching a movie, just speaking like this. There's so many questionable choices made, so many bad creative liberties made with the MAC schedule that it's, like, actually frustrating. I'm not a movie critic, have not seen Project Hail Mary, but yeah, like, still, like, I'm just really confused by their approach.
Yeah, I do have to say, at least on the bright side, I think Buffalo fans will be happier having that game on a Saturday compared to Black Friday. I can't remember exactly if I saw something. I don't think I know for sure like Buffalo fans do not like the weeknight games. This is a program that is vehemently against it.
They don't
So
like the
I
Saturday games either. They don't like the Saturday games either. I remember the Liberty game in 2023 or 24 that was like there was a camera shot. There was no one in that camera shot. Period.
yeah, attendance is usually a struggle. And of course, I mean, part of it is like the camera shot is at the student section, but you have basically no students there. I'll go ahead and drop some other Mac knowledge here, but because like I did have to ask around about this one because they're not like super in the area for me. Well, like I asked some people, like because I last year I did a doubleheader. I went to the Bulls game on Saturday and then the Bills game on Sunday, and I asked people to tailgate. I was like, why are people? Because I actually someone I was talking to was like, I've tried to get people fired up to go to like a Bulls game and stuff, and it just hasn't happened. And I was like, why is it so hard for them to get people at the games? And why is the student section have hardly anyone in it? Because that's where the camera pants to. It pants in the student section. Um, it turns out Buffalo is very primarily an engineering school, so not exactly a student base that's going to be extremely interested in football. So that's definitely one of their biggest challenges there. And of course, because I mean, it would be cool if they could get the city behind it, because the city of Buffalo will get behind really anyone. And I know part of that has to do with winning, like win games, and they will come. Um, this season, I mean, four Saturday home games is. Oh, sorry, actually, I misspoke. Five Saturday home games is definitely a huge positive. Their fans will be happy with that. But I mean, the first comments I've received when I posted Buffalo's schedule was, they were frustrated that they were playing two FCS opponents. Um, so that's definitely a problem. I tried even looking back and trying to look at like headlines or anything to figure out what happened. Like I I feel like someone bailed on them last moment and they just had to find a game. I think that's what the scenario was there, but definitely hard to tell. Um, but yeah, and that means they have to win 7 games for bowl eligibility, most likely. So that's going to be another challenge for them.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, like you said though, like winning 7 games like would likely be it, but you never know with this day and age of bowl games. Like that we might have to eat our words with the scheduling because with after what happened with the Birmingham Bowl this year, how Georgia Southern. Ooh, man, I hope no Georgia Southern fans catch this one because I just made a very bad mistake. Georgia Southern fans waited hours for their bowl opponent, only for 5-7 conference mate App State to step up. Like you never know if like a 6-6 2 FCS win Buffalo ends up getting the call because no one wants to play in a bowl game. Just with the way things are. But yeah, that's interesting about the engineering because I'm trying to think of other engineering focused schools. I feel like Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, like those schools have like very good student fan bases, but maybe I haven't been paying attention.
Yeah. I know for them, like it becomes a challenge. So it's very, very odd thing, but I definitely hope I hope they can figure out. But we'll move on to Central Michigan now. The Chippewas. What are your first thoughts when you look at their schedule?
Looking at their schedule, I really enjoy just the different like the in particular two games like the Mountain West games like with New Mexico and Wyoming, especially New Mexico week 1. Which may or may not be on our radar. It depends on how things are as a family and how my brother's football schedule is. But that is a legitimate Group of 5 game of the year, really. I mean, New Mexico has a ton of talent returning from that team. Like it's not a clean slate. Like when Bronco Mendenhall left, like a lot of ex guys are returning. And then of course Wyoming at home. It's great that they get Wyoming in Mount Pleasant and not in Laradice. So, excuse me, should just add to the attraction of that game as well. And like Wyoming plays a tough brand of football. Like there is going to be some paint flying from helmets with that one because it's just going to be old fashioned. Like there's going to be fullbacks galore. No Evans Svoboda though to throw an interception in a neck roll. I know I made a joke last year about how Wyoming lost the game because they wanted to let a guy with a neck roll throw a pass when of course Svoboda used to be a tight end or used to be a quarterback. But then of course I have to mention too with the Miami game. I mean, you got to mention the 2016 Central Michigan Miami Beach Bowl, and I don't know if you can see the screen, the iced out, the one game only icy white uniforms for Central Michigan, featuring a look at my boy John Bonamego. Look how iced out this man is.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, that's
my man
amazing.
has that on. He's got that fit on. But I mean, of course, like the odds are stacked against him with that one. But yeah, with Central Michigan, honestly, looking at this, there's one game I like, and I'm not sure if you're gonna segue into it. But there's one game I like in November. But this is a very favorable schedule, and I know I mentioned that Ball State that they had the half bye, like you call it. Central Michigan also has a half bye leading into that one. It is tough, though, that they do not play a home game after November 11th. I always think it's tricky in the MAC. I always wonder who kind of has the early senior days. And I don't know if it has an actual effect, but it's just kind of weird that Central Michigan just won't have a home game past mid-November. It's really strange, honestly. But it is key that they get Western Michigan at home. That's a huge one. They get Miami of Ohio at home as well. I mean, so Central Michigan might take care of some unfinished business this year. Only thing is Ohio being on the road, but yeah, but like this is I think for me, maybe it's biased. I think Central Michigan is an early MAC favorite for me just because the schedule is pretty favorable.
I agree with that. There was a lot when I looked at it. Like I thought that Central Michigan came away with one of the more favorable draws of anyone in the MAC. So that definitely bodes well for them. Going to be a tough stretch there late in October. Ohio, Western Michigan, and Miami all back to back to back there. That will be tough. But overall, though, there's a lot to like about the schedule, and obviously like maybe that Ball State game could be tricky in Muncie at the end of the year. That could be the one that cost Central Michigan a spot in the MAC championship. But overall, though, definitely they only have what is it? One, two. They only have 5 true road games. That helps a lot. And then yeah, so they play Eastern Michigan in Ford Field on a Wednesday in November. What are your first thoughts about this arrangement?
Again, this is part of the scheduling thing with the Mac where it's like I'm really confused with these creative choices, these creative liberties you're taking with the schedule, because this game should be like on Black Friday weekend. Like Michigan State did that with Penn State. Last year they played a Thanksgiving weekend game, so it is doable. Like there's not the excuse of the Lions playing on Thursday is not one there, but they chose to make it on November 4th, and I just think the Mac is kind of forgetting like some things in the past that happened because I like Toledo and Northern Illinois had played a neutral site game in at the White Sox Stadium, and I'm trying to pull up the attendance. I wish I did this before because it wasn't on my mind, but like they played a game at I'm about to call it Comiskey Park or whatever, but or at Rate Field, and that game drew 10,000 fans for what should have been a momentous event, the first football game, and only to date at the White Sox field. So I'm just confused as to why they're doing that. On the other hand, everyone knows I love neutral site games, so like I'm gonna tune in for this one. Like I'm excited for it. I'm just confused about the placement of the game and also like the amount of rent they're paying for both schools. Like for me, it would have made more sense if, of course, the Detroit Lions, the people that run the Game Above Sports Bowl. That's just the thing. You have to keep remembering how the sponsors change for these bowl games, so it's hard. But if they had approached Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan, because we don't know what happens in those meetings with the every single bowl organizer, but I can imagine there's some discussion where it's like, hey, the bowl game model needs change, it needs reform. Why don't we make bowl games in season? Why don't we do like an NBA Cup type model where like we eventivize the regular season? But no, like Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan decided to pay, I think it was like $500,000 worth of rent, split the cost for rent for the next 2 years to only sell maybe like 10,000 tickets on a Wednesday night. Like I'm at a loss for words for a lot of leadership within the MAC. They're being run, like a lot of these athletic departments are being run by Xbox and PS5 players. I'd hate to say that, but it's like that's the type of thing I would do in Dynasty mode.
Yeah, it's just so strange. And when it was first announced, it was like, oh, this could be a cool idea on the week of Thanksgiving. Like that weekend, the students are gone, so they're not going to be able to attend. Why not get this game on a neutral site and make it available for your alums to go, your alums in Detroit to go to the game? I thought that was going to be a good idea. Then that's not when they played the game. This Wednesday in November, November 4th, is just, this doesn't work out for anyone. It's in a different location on a weeknight, so it's hard for students to go. It's a Wednesday night, like it's going to be very difficult for alums to get to the game too. So it's just you're minimizing the ability to have fans in attendance for this one, and that's kind of disappointing to me. Like this could have been an exciting thing, and I think already it's something that is already leaving a bad taste in their fans' mouths.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just confused, honestly, as to why they both did it. Like really, because again, it takes a home game away from those local fans. I mean, maybe it's not as much a concern for Eastern Michigan since they're closer to Detroit, but as I've learned, like Mount Pleasant is not the closest drive to Detroit, so that fan base is going to struggle, I think, next year when it's their home game. So like I said, I'm going to tune in. I love seeing these neutral site games at NFL stadiums, especially as it seems like we're going to have less bowls, particularly the Detroit Bowl. The Game of Sports Bowl just folded last year, but I think these fans want smarter decisions, especially with their money, because now in this day and age, like the fans are the ones that are bankrolling these programs. Like I remember when I was at the UTEP spring game in 2024, and straight up, that there was Coach Walden on the big screen begging for money. And I'm thinking we're not the athletic. We support this team, but the people of El Paso are hardworking people. Like they shouldn't have to bankroll their local college team. But that here we are, like we have, fans are having to bankroll their teams. And instead of, I guess, getting the best FCS talent on rental deals, because that is what it is nowadays in the NIL era. It's a rental deal. It's a 1-year deal essentially. I mean, we're having, I guess, I'm not an Eastern or Central Michigan fan, but they're having their money spent to play a makeshift MAC championship game on a Wednesday at Ford Field. Like, I can't imagine how I'd feel as a fan if I was in that position.
Yeah. And so far from what I've seen online, their reactions have not been great. They are not pleased. Um, but that'll segue us into the other side of this game, Eastern Michigan. The Eagles are going to be one of the rare teams in this conference that gets a full bye week. So that'll be very interesting. What else kind of comes to mind when you look at their schedule?
So I saw someone say, excuse me, I think it was Pete Thamel on ESPN, or someone from ESPN said that Chris Creighton is on the hot seat. Let me just say that for what Chris Creighton has done for Eastern Michigan, this man deserves a lifetime contract, or he just deserves a contract to just expire, like what New Mexico State did with Doug Martin. How he took New Mexico State to their first bowl game in 57 years, and they just kind of let his contract expire. I don't think Chris Creighton will ever be on the hot seat to be fired prematurely, but I think he can easily quell those doubts of him being on the hot seat. With a nice 4-2 start to the season. I'm looking at the schedule. Sacramento State week 0 is that's a very favorable game, and some week 0 action for the MAC too. I'm interested to see if that one gets a linear TV spot, because that would be a nice lead into a Mountain West game that would happen that day. I just can't wait for the broadcast announcements, especially where that one's placed. And then San Jose State too. San Jose State struggled against Central Michigan. They lost last year at home. Eastern Michigan at San Jose State at home at Rynearson. So that could be a 2-0 start there. You got your two Big Ten teams, and then you got Lindenwood and UMass, and that's a great start to the year, really. And then you mentioned the bye week too, where Central Michigan. I wonder if like the league kind of took notice of Central Michigan's style of play and did this for multiple teams in the league to kind of give them, a little edge against the Chippewas. That physical offense, they have a bye week before that game, so like that's gonna help a lot too, and that's a rivalry game. That's it's gonna be a charged game, and then Kent State. So like this team can very likely, like, this is a team that could make a bowl game. Honestly, it kind of like Bowling Green. They're not in need of it. But again, like, the schedule is favorable for them in league play to make that bowl game, kind of like it is for Ball State. I will say as well too, looking at the schedule, I just kind of lost my train of thought. But the bye weeks are interestingly placed, though. I will say, where they'll only play one game from October 25th all the way to November 17th. Kind of strange, but there has to be a reason for it.
Yeah, at least you get a lot of rest around that Central Michigan game, that's for sure. I for one am very thrilled with the week 0 MACtion. I for a long time I kept looking at the week 0 schedule, kind of trying to figure out like where I could potentially go, but there wasn't a ton very close to me. And then this game got dropped in my lap. This is definitely a new lead candidate for where I might go week 0. So I'm very excited for that one. Definitely going to try to make it there. And then the San Jose State game, like, there's actually a decent amount of history between these two programs. Eastern Michigan's only two bowl wins have both occurred against San Jose State. So how fitting would it be if they returned to a bowl in the year where they played San Jose State? I think that's really cool. And again, like, you've hit the nail on the head here, Chris Creighton. Like, a lot of people don't realize what he's done with this program. Like, Eastern Michigan was widely regarded as one of the worst programs in college football, one of the hardest places to win before he got there. Now he's made them a very solid program. Last couple years have been a little bit tough, but I think this is a team that really turned a corner late last year, and now they lead the conference in experience back. I think that's going to be a big deal, especially with this nice kind of easy start to the schedule. Somewhat easier start to the schedule. Like, again, like, you get all those home games. Your first conference road game is at UMass. Even the next one, Akron, is not too intimidating. You get to host Toledo. Again, like, the gray turf has not been friendly to the Rockets. So, like, you're really looking at a position here where this team could build a lot of momentum really quickly, and they don't play a ton on weeknights either. So there's lots to like here for Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember what I wanted to say. Like, Noah Kim comes back as well. Like, the wealth, like, they already have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they have like an edge at quarterback that they haven't had the past couple of years, if we're being honest. I mean, honestly, since Ben Bryant was there, I want to say was the last like truly great quarterback, at least from a pro prospect perspective, that they've had. So, I mean, Eastern Michigan may even end up ironically breaking their MAC championship game drought. with this year with the schedule that they have, and how fitting it would be for them to make the MAC championship in a year where they already have a game scheduled at Ford Field compared to like the rest of the years that they've been in the MAC.
I know, right? Yeah, and that's actually a good last point there. Like, I think they've usually had to look for a quarterback pretty much every year, so I think it's a huge deal that they actually have one returning. But let's go ahead and go to the team that is on your shirt there, a very nice shirt, the Kent State Golden Flashes. We know Kent State always goes on those challenging non-conference schedules, but this one's a little bit different than usual. What are your first thoughts when you look at Kent State's schedule?
Yeah, so I know our good friend Bobby from the TNT College Football Podcast had wanted me to talk about SEC football, talking about Kent State, South Carolina. Bobby, here I am. This one's for you. I really don't have much to say about it. I do think Kent State will be competitive with the way that they run the ball early on. But I think South Carolina will pull away. I mean, there really isn't that much to say. I don't think Kent State has beaten a power conference team since 2012 when they beat Rutgers after Gary Nova intercepted or threw 6 interceptions when Gary Nova had one of his bad days, despite how great he was. But really isn't much I can say about that one, Bobby, unfortunately. But like Akron, their rival, there is a razor thin margin for error, especially because they play USF in the rare all group of five paycheck game where USF is not having to make a return trip to Kent, Ohio for that game. And USF should be good. I'm excited for what Brian Hartline's going to do there. I think that's probably one of the best pairings, coach pairings in this coaching carousel that we had. But just looking at the schedule, like I think Kent State's going to be a thorn in a lot of team sides this year. I think Mark Carney is doing great. I feel like he was so close to figuring out the recipe to winning at Kent State. I won't say it's at the levels it was with Sean Lewis, but getting Ohio at home is huge. Getting the wagon wheel game at home is also huge. Traveling to Sacramento State isn't great, but the fact that they have a bye week after that and then are playing Bowling Green, the anniversary award can get spicy. And then for good measure, having Miami of Ohio at home as well, I mean, it doesn't hurt. So like, I don't think Kent State will make a bowl just because the margin that's needed for them to succeed and reach six wins. But I think that we could have a Ball State Ohio type game where that upset happens, or even a Bowling Green Toledo game. Like I think Kent State is due for an upset in one of these games. So this is an interesting schedule as always.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Like they did not get the most favorable draw on this for sure. You get really like Akron and Sacramento State. Those two games back to back are probably the easiest stretch they have, and even then, like that is your most intense rivalry, and then you immediately go and play in California 6 days later. That's going to be really difficult. And then, of course, you got the non-conference game against South Carolina. I'll mention that just for Bobby's sake as well. Again, like I mean, it would be cool if they maybe put up a fight there, but it might be difficult for them to do that. And then, I mean, we'll even see what they do against Ohio State because last year when Kent State played Oklahoma close to the conference play, like they actually made their quarterback a healthy scratch for that game to preserve him for conference play. So you wonder if they might do that against Ohio State as well. The USF game is an interesting one because it kind of came about because Kent State and Kentucky like scheduled a game. And it was scheduled for like a week, and the SEC went to 9 conference games, which waved the game off the calendar. So that's kind of how that one came about. But yeah, it'll definitely be. I don't like that they have to go on the road to Sacramento State. I think Sacramento State is going to be able, where Sacramento State makes their year one impact, is going to be picking off teams at home. So that's where Kent State really has to watch out. But overall, like you said, I think they can definitely be the thorn in the side of some of these teams. But it's going to. They were so close to a bowl last year. Like I want to say they can take that next step to get there, but the schedule does not make it easy.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't. It's just a shame too how honestly how I guess the way things work in the college sports business, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like some schools like Kent State and Akron, that's just what they have to do. Like playing at the Division I level is a moneymaker for the athletic department, and that's it. Like who cares if they make bowl games or not? Like their athletic programs, I guess the bulk of their athletic program is funded by media money, by NCAA tournament units, and by guarantee games. And that's just a sad reality. And it kind of hurts. I guess I hurt for the student athletes that stay and pay their dues with like schools like, Kent State, where they spend their time and they don't have, like accomplishments like a bowl game, where the chips are stacked against them for those accomplishments. But like you said, though, like the Sacramento State, I do wonder how that effect will be, like flying out to California. Like you said, picking off opponents there. It is helpful to get them on a Friday, though. I will say it could be worse, but yeah, like I'm excited for Kent State, honestly, just to see how far they came last year against all. It's like I honestly thought that they would be one of the worst FBS teams of all time last year, just with everything that happened in the offseason, but Mark Carney did a Coach of the Year worthy job, a National Coach of the Year worthy job. And so I'm confident that they'll continue that trajectory.
Yeah. And I think Mark Carney is going to really continue to work at getting this program to invest. I think he's really done a pretty good job rallying them a little bit. So I think the future for Kent State looks a lot better. Like you said, a lot of times it's getting those buy games and really helping fund other parts of the athletic department, which are very successful. Like, they invest very heavily in basketball and see a lot of success there. Lately their baseball team has been doing well. And then I'm trying to remember the other sport. I think it was like track or something like that, where they were like ridiculously good. There's one of those sports. I can't remember which one it was, but like they've won like 26 straight MAC titles in that sport or something like that. Like I'm blanking on which one it was, but anyways, I do think the future looks bright for Kent State, especially because I mean Mark Carney looks like he's a guy. But yeah, we'll see what that ends up being for them this year. We go to the Miami Redhawks. The Redhawks obviously have made it to 3 straight MAC titles, so this is definitely a team you've got to circle and look at. Like, okay, what do they have, and who has to worry about facing this team basically, because they have been a wagon lately. What are your first thoughts when you look at their schedule?
Yeah, so looking at their schedule, so first off, like, Chuck Martin is just a beacon of stability there. And I know that they lose pieces on offense. I mean, of course they lose. They lose to Quan Finn, but that loss was kind of offset by some of the things that happened at the end of the year when they got young guys experience at the quarterback position. On defense, excuse me, I know they had guys like Jackson Kuwach that went to All-Star games, and just other guys that were contributors that are gone as well. But Chuck Martin always seems to reload. I think looking at their schedule, their non-conference schedule is like the biggest question mark. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Got suddenly attacked by mucus. But I think they can shock either Pitt or Cincinnati. That's just the type of program that Miami is. And then UConn is a game that's a swing game. Like, we know Jason Candle's a great coach, but I don't know if UConn's transfer portal pieces are going to mesh well by that time. So we'll see there. But very realistically, like, I can see Miami going 3-1 with either a win against Pitt or Cincinnati, just with the way that they're built as a program. And with the win against either, I think they're a playoff contender. I do think that the schedule, they got a favorable draw as well with getting Bowling Green, UMass, Akron, Kent State, and Buffalo. Like, those are all games that they should be favored in, really. And I really don't see much stopping Miami from making a 4th straight MAC championship game, because we know that the MAC cannibalizes itself. So if their only 2 losses in conference play are to Central Michigan, which is on the road, and Western Michigan, which is on the road, or Central Michigan or Ohio, any combination of the 2 of those 3, I think we're looking at Miami making another MAC championship game. But I will say, though, I like we talked a little bit before, Miami, Western Michigan, a MAC championship rematch just being on a weeknight. Like, I think that's the type of matchups, like you said, and not to get into that again, but now that we're talking about Miami, like, that's the type of matchups I think the MAC should be building, like, for their weeknight games, like getting the teams that were really good and just not putting the rivalries on the weekend. But appealing to the casual fan that knows that saw Jalen Buckley run for 1,000,000 yards in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Like, oh hey, they're playing against Miami, who is always in the MAC championship game from a casual fan's perspective. So yeah, that's just my take on this rivalry. But I think we could be looking at a Miami Central Michigan MAC championship game just based on what we've seen with these schedules so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a lot to like here about Miami's non-conference schedule. Like it very much is a good combination of it's a schedule of opportunities, but it's not impossible too. Like they have a shot at all of those games. They also have a chance of losing all of them, but they also have a shot at winning all of those games. Again, Pitt, that's not a long trip. They Pitt looks like they're going to be pretty solid, but again, like that's not an unbeatable team. Miami shows up, plays well, forces some turnovers. They can get that done. Cincinnati, neutral site at the FC Cincinnati Soccer Stadium here in Cincinnati. So that will be a kind of cool neutral site game there. I think it'll be interesting that it's going to be taking place kind of in an area that can get, look a lot better attendance wise, fill out more fans. I think it'll bring some excitement there. And then, of course, UConn at home is going to be a really cool game and a massive one. So that'll definitely be very interesting to watch. And yeah, I think you really circled those conference games that are going to be huge ones to watch. At Central Michigan, at Western Michigan, those are really going to shape a lot of how the MAC goes. Um, it does feel like Miami can make it to the MAC title without winning those games, but at the same time, like that's for Central Western Michigan. Like that's how you make it to the MAC titles. You've got to pull off this home game against Miami, and of course, again, like this is another situation where we end up with a disappointing draw here. Like the Battle of the Bricks, unfortunately, is on a Tuesday. I mean, that's not as bad for me. I'm not that far away. Maybe I could try to make it there, but um, but still, like that's definitely not what you want to see. Is it one of your more in-demand home games being on a Tuesday?
Yeah, that's a good point. I overlooked the Battle of the Bricks as well too, and like I think too, like that's just a huge opportunity missed for that one because, I mean, like especially with the battle with the Victory Bell going away, like the Battle of the Bricks is pretty much all Miami has, and of course with Marshall going their separate ways from the MAC a long time ago, that's all that Ohio currently has from a rivalry perspective. So it's a shame that that one is also what fell victim to the made for TV bug. And I know you mentioned the Victory Bell. I can't believe I didn't mention that as well. Just loving neutral site games. For me, I think that just shows how fickle that contract situation was with Cincinnati and Miami. That if that like I don't hate MLS stadiums. I don't hate soccer stadiums, but I think that I fail to see the big deal a lot of times with a lot of these soccer stadiums, really, um, because as a recruit, I would much rather play at Paycor Stadium, an NFL stadium. There's just no reason if you move it to TQL Stadium, there's no reason for it not to be at Yager Stadium. But I understand that, that the Victory Bell divorce is a very ugly one, but that's just my thoughts with that. It should be an interesting environment, really. It'll be unique. I mean, that's a rivalry that has not historically, like if you look at the grand scheme, I think only about 10 have been at neutral sites, 10 editions of the Victory Bell. So that's interesting. I just wanted to mention that though. Plus, like, I don't know. I don't know if you guys are huge soccer. I know that you're starting to have a soccer presence, but I just think a lot of those MLS stadiums look the same. Like it's almost like a soccer version of the cookie cutter pandemic that happened in the 80s and the 90s with all the multi-purpose stadiums. Like they just look the same to me, honestly. So like I just fail to see that appeal.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. They do kind of all look the same. I think it kind of offers a little bit more in like terms of like fan amenities and stuff. Like very easy to get around compared to Paycor Stadium. Very easy to get to concessions, everything, not to wait in long lines. And they also have the canopy overhead in case Cincinnati weather strikes and it rains. So I think that's why locally there's an appeal because I do think fans in Cincinnati are very, very notoriously if the weather's bad, we're not going to show up kind of thing. So I think they kind of prepared for that because I remember one year when they played the Paycor Stadium, there was just an absolute downpour of rain, and no one showed up for the game. It was an empty, and that's the hard part is like if you don't fill it out, like it looks so ugly when you're in an NFL stadium and it's mostly empty, and the environment just isn't great. So that's kind of the perspective of what they end up going with this game.
Yeah, I get that, and I remember that game too. I remember watching that one in my dorm room. I remember watching just a slog, honestly.
I
Yeah.
also don't remember why, but like I feel like it was on at like the same time as like Notre Dame USC. This is like for the most part, like a lot of those local ABC contracts have gone away. But this is a rare case where like it stayed around. So in Cincinnati, we had this game in an empty stadium in the pouring rain. It was just an absolute slog. And like Notre Dame USC was like this intense game that came down to the ending, and it was not on at all in Cincinnati because this game was on instead.
Yeah, wow. Like I do like the throwback like local TV deal, but that seems like a horrible problem to have, honestly. Like it's
That is the last time I remember seeing like a local TV deal like that end up. Like that is the last time I ever remember seeing.
yeah, it's just crazy how that was just 8 years ago, and like that's just unthinkable now. Like how fast like the media landscape has changed.
It really has. Like it has flown to a completely different thing. We go to the other side of the battle for the bricks. We go to the Ohio Bobcats. The Bobcats definitely another a team that usually is a contender within the MAC, undergoing a coaching change again. What are your first thoughts when you look at their schedule?
I think honestly, like they got a tough draw from the league, but it's nothing that they can't handle. It is tough because they lose Sia Bangura, they lose Parker Navarro, but Ohio always seems to stay consistent. And even if they struggle this year, it'll be just temporary. Like I think it was like 2021 where they struggled, lost to Duquesne, but they bounced right back up, went to the Arizona Bowl the next year. So I mean, I think they get a tough draw just getting Miami of Ohio, like we said, at Yager Stadium. I do like a lot the Toledo game. We talked a little bit beforehand, just that one being on Black Friday, where you have two of the league's most prominent powers on Black Friday. And it's like I think if you were to do something, I think that's something that the MAC did right. Really, with the schedule, we talked a lot about what they did wrong. I think creating that game in a very highly visible window for much of the country on Black Friday at noon, where if the early games are blowouts, a lot of the country has a chance to tune into that one if that game's a competitive, engaging game, and just really
There's a
see. Oh, no,
there's
go
a
ahead.
good shot that game ends up on like ESPN too as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a win for the league, and I think the league did a great job with that one. I will say though, I think I think that this year, I think Ohio will get back to a bowl game. I think that the schedule's it's tough, but it does have its share of favorable games in league. If I looking at it, I think that they might only have to win 3 games in conference to end up making a bowl game. Like Jacksonville State's going to be a tough one, but they get that one out really. So that one should be a pretty evenly matched game. South Alabama struggled last year, and they lose pieces like Kentrell Bullock at running backs. They might be in for a rebuild. So we look at, even though they got a tough draw with Central Michigan, with Toledo and Miami of Ohio, like they still have Sac State, Eastern Michigan, Akron, and Ball State. Like this is a team that could go 6-6 just on the strength of this is balanced non-conference schedule. Tough draw, but I think Ohio weathers the storm a bit, just still makes it a bowl season.
It's a very strong culture program. I think that's what really helps them continue to be good, despite coaching changes and everything else. Like this program just has a great culture behind it. And I think that's kind of what makes the Ohio Jacksonville State game there on September 12th so much fun. Is like that is a battle of two very strong cultures going at it. So I definitely like that game. That one was a home and home series that really got added on the fly this offseason. So I think that one's pretty cool. The South Alabama game, I will say that is going to be a tough trip. We've seen many times before, many teams outside of a non-conference play get tripped up in that road game to Mobile. So that's definitely something that Ohio has to watch out for there. Obviously on the high end, you could see Ohio giving Nebraska a tough time. That's not a game that's entirely out of question there. Nebraska still can't figure out the offensive line. But the road games are definitely a little bit tricky. Like playing at Kent State, like Ohio could be the team that gets tripped up by them. They have to go and play at Sacramento State a week after playing Central Michigan. That is going to be kind of a tough travel stretch there. That's a very secret spot where maybe Sacramento State pulls off like their big win. That kind of this is kind of like their major moment in their first year as an FBS program is upsetting Ohio. Um, Highly possible with just that game being on the road and the week after Central Michigan. So that's definitely something to watch. But yeah, overall though, I think the schedule came out it came out okay. Like you got some challenges, but like you said, like I feel like their culture can carry this team to at least make a bowl game.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think it's a great point. Like I agree. Like it's a mix, really. I guess there kind of is. There's like the middle ground. Like, there's a middle ground. The worst of the worst is like you don't draw the bulk of the middle. Like you have the middle ground, but you have at the same time like the best teams in the league. And it's just a year where I wouldn't expect Ohio, like you said, a strong cultural program. I just don't think Ohio is going to be at the top again, but they're going to be Ohio. Like they're going to be who they are. I think that is interesting though about Sacramento State potentially stealing a win, because the way I see it, I think that they would steal a weeknight game, honestly, just going to the West Coast. But we will see, honestly. It will be interesting to see just how exactly it plays out, just that whole West Coast and travel effect.
Yeah, and I do have to say overall, like Ohio, we assume they're going to make it there just because of the culture and everything, but there's a lot of swing games on this schedule. There's a lot of games you look at, you're like, on a good day they could win this game, on a bad day they could lose this game. There's a lot of that in the schedule, so that's going to be a very interesting thing to kind of watch as the year goes on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, and I think that's just a testament to just how not volatile, but how anyone can contend in the MAC. Maybe volatile is the word, because I mean, the closest thing we've had to a MAC dynasty in like the past 10 years is Miami making 3 MAC championship games in the past 3 years. And even that's something that's just like unthinkable with the way that we think, with the parity that exists in the MAC.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, like, yeah, it was all the way back to like when I was in college when we had NIU versus Bowling Green 3 years in a row. That's probably the last time we saw any program make it to that many championship games in a row. So that's definitely interesting. But we jump to the newcomer, Sacramento State. The wildest move you could have made. Um, and now they begin their first year in FBS. They did it. They managed to get up here. I remember talking about when they were starting this whole push last year. Like I never would have imagined back then that we would be talking to them about them as a MAC program this year. But what are your first thoughts on their first ever MAC schedule?
I mean, beyond the obvious with travel, I think it's a very intriguing schedule. Really, starting off with Mississippi Valley State, the Delta Devils playing their fifth, I believe, FBS opponent ever since the split. First since 2016, so should be a great opportunity for the Delta Devils just to really test themselves, have a rare opportunity. And it should, honestly, I think it might be closer than their past 2 tries against FBS schools. They lost by 47 to Eastern Michigan in 2016 when they broke their bowl drought. They lost by 66 to New Mexico when they were really good in the mid 2010s. So I think this one should be a bit closer. I think Mississippi Valley State will score a couple touchdowns. I don't think the score will get too out of hand. But I guess just looking at bookends, we already talked about Eastern Michigan in week 0. I love the Hawaii game, even if it was supposed to be UMass this year, because the late season Hawaii game is a lost art, and I think it just shows just the way that college football has shifted. It's one of those little things that just shows just the magnitude of just the way things have changed since the playoff era, where it used to be like, I think we all remember in 2007 where Colt Brennan and and Hawaii were clinching a Sugar Bowl bid in a non-conference game, a destination game for Washington against a young Jake Locker. We all remember those late season games with like Timmy Chang duking it out against Drew Stanton in Hawaii against Michigan State, where it's like teams have decided that it's not fun, it's not beneficial to play, to interrupt your season, interrupt your rhythm, to end the season at Hawaii, to give the fans and players something fun to do. Because I think something I mentioned on either another show, I think on another show, or just one of my just chats in this room, just streams of consciousness by myself, where it's like, with the amount of money that players make nowadays, they can just go to Hawaii in the off season. Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like, I mean, the amount of NIL money a lot of these programs are giving players, like Hawaii is something that they can just do in their free time. They can just buy a plane ticket. But this game, even though there's circumstances for why it happened, I think it's special. I think it should be celebrated. That we get a non-conference game in Hawaii, and the fact that Sacramento State has a bye week beforehand, they'll have 16 days to prepare for this game. It just feels like it's the mid 2000s again, honestly, even if it's not a power conference team. So like, I am just soaking this one in. Like, I love it. My Hawaii trip will have to wait, but I'll be watching that one from home, just like with just rose tinted glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm old enough to remember when Alabama traveled to Hawaii and lost. Very fun experience. And yeah, I definitely miss that. As we continue to unfortunately, see non-conference schedules trend from being entertaining to it's just about self-preservation, basically. So that road trip to Hawaii now has become something that has gone to the wayside because of self-preservation. And man, I miss that though. That would be that like all those games, like you even like a Cincinnati team that was, I believe, Orange Bowl bound, heading out to Hawaii and barely surviving that one. Like so many great games throughout the years were played on the island at the end of the year. I think this year's Hawaii Bowl kind of returns some of that magic a little bit, but I look forward to I'll be seeing more in the future when we get the new Aloha Stadium. But on to the rest of Sacramento State schedule. I love the shout out there for the Delta Devils. Delta Devils mentioned on the podcast. Um, Again, very excited for that Eastern Michigan game. Another one that was very intriguing in the non-conference schedule. Obviously, they also play a regional game against Fresno State. That I think that one's really cool. And then hosting North Dakota State. So both the FBS newcomers facing each other. I think that one's going to be really interesting. I think that was a huge win for Sacramento State to be able to draw the Bison at home on the front end of that home and home. I think that was a huge win for them. I didn't think they'd be able to do that. I thought they would have to take their lumps and make the trip to the Fargo Dome first, but that's going to be really cool. And then of course, I think a lot of college football fans, very passionate college football fans are looking forward to that crazy cross country Sacramento State UMass game. That one's gonna be really interesting. It's on a Saturday, but I really hope it somehow gets like a TV slot. That would be a lot of fun. Um, but overall, like the good news is you don't see Sacramento State go on the road back to back weeks. They kind of did what they could, the best they could do with this. Again, when you have a team this far away, your hands are kind of tied a little bit, but at the very least, like, they made sure there wasn't a ton of like Sacramento State having to make like those long road trips back to back weeks. And also, they don't really have to face a lot of bad weather. They don't have a lot of weeknight games in MAC play. They play at Central Michigan. That's it. That one probably will be brutal weather. That is the furthest north MAC team. So good luck because it's very possible it snows for that game. But like at the very least, like their trip to Bowling Green is going to be usually mid-October. It's still pretty warm. Eastern Michigan for sure is going to be warm in August. And then you have Ball State in there. That one could be hit or miss. Who knows what it's going to be in late October. But I think Sacramento State definitely faces a challenge with the schedule. And considering the fact that at one point it looked like they weren't going to make it to FBS, Brendan Marion leaves for Colorado. So you lose him. He took some key players with him. So I think you're looking at kind of a challenge here roster wise. I don't know if Sacramento State can challenge for a bowl, but I think they could win at least win a couple of these home games.
Yeah, I think like you said, I mean, I don't think they'll make a bowl, but a lot of these games, even the road games too, are I mean, they should be competitive. Like Bowling Green, I think that's a team that they match up well with. Ball State definitely. That game, I know we keep mentioning that game, and it's not for the reasons that people want or think. I just think that that is legitimately a competitive. That's going to be a competitive game. Like those teams match up well at the moment. I think. I'm interested though with the North Dakota State game when because that'll be covered in the late May, early June television release for early season games. I'm interested to see if they give that one an after dark spot because it'll kind of show ESPN's approach with the Sacramento State thing because ESPN has been lacking in content in late night content on Saturdays for ESPNU and even on ESPN and ESPN2. There's been some weeks, I think it's been 4 different weeks where they just haven't aired a late night game on the main two networks. So I'm interested to see what they do. And I think we'll start to see that strategy with the North Dakota State game.
Very interesting. And now like you've got me kind of wanting to like peek at the schedule a little bit for that week and trying to see like what other West Coast home games there are. Um there's definitely a little bit of potential competition. Like you've got Montana, Oregon State. I mean that one has late night and the CW written all over it. Fresno State, San Jose State's definitely going to be late night. Probably on Fox Sports One if I had to guess. That'll be pretty cool if I had to nailing these. So I don't know. There's a decent amount of late night inventory here, but there's also not too much. I think it's definitely a good possibility they maybe get that linear spot. I mean, you might as well, like, what else are you going to air? Give us some fun and give us a look at these two teams that are moving up to FBS.
Yeah, I think I like the way I look at that one. I compare it to the 1976 Buccaneers Seahawks game, the sort of expansion bowl, but for the FBS. I don't know if anyone else is looking at it that way, but for me, it just seems like a marriage of convenience, honestly. So I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, and we even got a comment in the chat. Like we were kind of just saying there, like at the Sacramento State North Dakota State game, that could draw some eyeballs. I think North Dakota State in general is going to draw some eyeballs.
Yeah. I think everyone is rooting for them to like fail. I'll never root for any program to fail, even Army's tough, or even Navy. I'll never root for anyone to fail. I just hope like for Navy and Air Force, I just want to beat them. But like I would never root for any program to fail. I think a lot of people are just they just want to see a dumpster fire. They just want to see a train wreck, and I just don't think they're gonna get it. I think that the MAC is a good league to step up into for an FBS school or for an FCS school. So I think they'll win a few games. I don't think they'll be embarrassed, really. I mean, we'll have to see financially how it ends up. That'll be the only embarrassment. But I think they'll have a good product on the field. So,
Yeah, I mean, I literally think like Sacramento State's strategy was, and I know like we covered this, like we did a podcast about these realignment moves, and we mentioned on there like the Sacramento State basically got to the point like we are going to move to FBS at all costs, and whatever we have to do to get there, we are going to do it, and eventually the MAC was the conference that took a bite of the apple here and decided to bring them in. I think they promised a lot of stuff financially that could help them out, and that's kind of what led to this very strange marriage that's going on here. Um, let's go ahead and jump to the Toledo Rockets. Toledo here with a very intriguing schedule, obviously under a new era here, but I think Toledo can still manage to be pretty good. What are your first thoughts on their schedule?
yeah, so looking at Toledo's schedule, I'm interested in the placement of their bye week. Well, before I get to that, great non-conference schedule. Temple is going to be a great game. Casey Keeler is going to really surprise some people. It may not even be a surprise because Temple was at really intriguing last year in the American. San Diego State at home is also huge. The fact that they don't have to go out west for that one. I mean, we're looking at a team, honestly, I look at this schedule. This is a team that if they go 12-1 with just a loss to Michigan State, this is a playoff team. This is a team that I think has 2023 potential. I'm just not sure. I have to check the portal to see how much they lost, how much went with Candle, but I'm interested to see. Like it's like you said, a new era. Like it's crazy that Jason Candle's not leading Toledo for the first time since the mid 2010s. But the schedule is very favorable. I think the league did them a solid with this late October stretch where they got a bye week before Sacramento State on November 4th, and then they follow up with UMass at home. The league definitely did them a solid there. Really helped them a lot. I don't think Sacramento State will steal one from them. And then we mentioned earlier, like, of course, Bowling Green with the Battle of I-75 being on a weekday, and then, of course, Black Friday with Ohio. I think if Ohio is a pivotal game in the MAC race, which it will be, but if it's like a winner-take-all game, I think I have to check again how much rest Ohio has. Okay, both teams are going to come in rested. So Toledo will have 8 days of rest. Ohio will have 9. Like, that might be one of the most impactful games in the playoff race if Toledo rolls in with an 11-1 record, which I think they can, honestly, with all else, with just depending on what happens in the portal. Have to look at the portal, but this is a schedule that I think that could make them playoff contender, really.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's really nothing out of reach here for them. Every single game is winnable. They could definitely. I think it's a tough ask to roll into East Lansing and win that game against Michigan State in the opener, just because that's the new staff's the first game in the new staff and everything. There are going to be a lot of new pieces, talented pieces, but a lot of new pieces. So that might be difficult for them to do. That might end up being one of the ones where, kind of like even this year when Western Michigan played Michigan State, like you end up looking back on it and you're like, man, if they played later in the year, the MAC team could have won that game. That might be what we look at with that one. But then, yeah, that home stretch there, like Temple and then San Diego State, like that is going to be a really cool set of games. I am very bullish on the Temple Owls this year. So I think that one's gonna be really interesting. San Diego State on the rise under Sean Lewis. Like I think, Sean Lewis returning to MAC territory. That one's gonna be really interesting. Again, like September 26th, that date has come up a lot. We talked about it with several other games like Miami, UConn, and all of that. Like that slate is just incredible. We haven't even covered the best one yet. But yeah, that game is one of the best non-conference games out there. But you look at the schedule overall though, like there's not a lot that intimidates me here. I definitely feel like there's some potential tripping points. You've got the Ball State game, and Eastern Michigan there. Those are two historically rough places for them to play. So that's kind of what you got to watch out for there. But I mean, for Toledo fans, like it does kind of suck to have the Bowling Green game on a Wednesday, but overall, they got Toledo season ticket holders got a pretty nice arrangement here with Temple, San Diego State, and Western Michigan all coming to the Glass Bowl.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I wonder how they form these things. I mean, of course, it's like year to year. It's just crazy how the dominoes line up, the stars align like that. Where even then, like this might be the year for Toledo to make a playoff push. Or in the past would have been a New Year's Six push, but like a playoff push. Yeah, Western Michigan is a great one, and also too, I'd like to know who they don't play. Them not playing Central Michigan also helps their playoff cause a lot. Really, I think Central Michigan might not be the best team in the league, but they're the team I feel like a lot of schools want to avoid just by the way that they play. I mean, they kind of remind me from a MAC sense of how Iowa was last year in the Big Ten, where Iowa wasn't the best team in the league, but you could catch Iowa on the wrong day, like Oregon almost did, Indiana almost did, and end up with a loss. So the same way about Central Michigan, the fact that Toledo avoids them, I feel really good. So I know I said that Central Michigan might be in the MAC championship game. Like I really think that it's between the three of Toledo, Central Michigan, and Miami in the MAC championship game, honestly. So I'm excited to see how that race ends up.
Yeah, agreed. And definitely I could see Toledo making the run at it for sure here. We go to we only have two teams left. Omar, I'm not sure like how big of a storm is going on there because I thought I saw lightning behind you.
Yes, yes, it's coming. Yeah, we got the warning for severe weather. It's coming. I didn't even notice it.
I saw I saw it flash in your background. I was like, oh boy. But anyways, we get to the UMass Minutemen here. UMass coming off a rough year last year, definitely one of the toughest FBS seasons we've seen in some time. And you cover UMass extensively, so I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, to say that the schedule a point of contention for UMass fans, especially recently, like myself, and like I only like UMass just because I grew up in Massachusetts. They were a great team, and I just wanted a team to get behind. Really, I'm an Army fan, of course. That's my number one team, but UMass is easy to root for just with the struggles that they've had at the FBS level, and so like it's easy to root for them, especially since they became an independent. They were the underdog. Now they're finally in the MAC. Still rooting for them, really, because that underdog allure is still there. But with the schedule, the fact that they gave up the Hawaii game and scheduled two FCS teams like Buffalo, there really isn't much to say. But if there's a program that needs to win two games against any team from any division, it's UMass. Um, I mean, Sacred Heart and Stonehill, that's the bottom of the barrel. Sacred Heart's in the Coastal Athletic Association. They really, I mean, they're really more of a Northeast Conference team. They still have that profile, I think, despite being in the Coastal. So that should be a game for UMass that UMass should be able to win. But then again, Bryant was the exact same team, and UMass lost to Bryant at home. So I think it's good that they have games against Sacramento State, that they at least got Sacramento State, that they got Akron at home, they got Ball State at home. Those are two other winnable games that it's good to see them have at home. And then as well, just going back to the scheduling and the MAC, really, like you'd like to see if they're gonna put Buffalo UMass, if they're gonna give UMass a game on a Saturday, on Thanksgiving Saturday, I would hope it would have been the Buffalo game. So again, I reiterate another questionable choice by the MAC, by the powers that be for the MAC scheduling these games. But you just really hope that UMass can just win both their FCS games, maybe beat Sacramento State, and then maybe win one of the more winnable games against Ball State or Akron, and just hope for some growth. Honestly, I think Harris Simiak I think he's a really good coach, and UMass is a tough job. He has a profile. He had success at Maine. But again, Maine was playing regional rivals. Recruiting in the Coastal, then Colonial Athletic Association, is different than recruiting in the MAC when they're playing against schools that aren't in your region. So you don't have that draw of having a local New England kid saying you're going to play against Maine, or you're going to play against Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. You're going to play against all those schools. Instead of playing those schools, like they're playing Eastern Michigan, Ball State, Toledo, and it's just a harder draw for like siphoning that talent in the Northeast. But there really isn't that much to say about UMass's schedule other than I just hope that they win winnable games. And I think that's a lot of the fan base's sentiment, because there's definitely frustration. The Hawaii game being gone did not help that, because that essentially would have been a bowl game, really. So, yeah, it's a tough situation to say the least.
Yeah, and it's kind of disappointing they didn't do that because that would definitely feel, that would give you the feeling of a bowl game a little bit for UMass. Like I think that would have been pretty cool for them, and there would definitely be ways to figure it out. I believe playing that game would have allowed UMass to play in week 0 and still get that kind of half bye week thing. Now I understand playing 13 games with only one 10-day break in there probably is not optimal. Maybe that's what they looked at, but I'm sharing the same sentiment as you, where I hope that we can see UMass just take some steps forward. I want them to gain momentum. I'm really rooting for them to get going, and of course, like I think there's a lot of hope that comes around at least finally being in a conference and having the same conference opponents. I think that kind of I think that kind of energized their fan base a little bit, and they have the investment. Like if you could get the momentum going, like you could start to get access to better players, and all that in the region, and start to really, you could see where this program could get going. But really, it's very hard to get off the mat, and that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. That I just didn't really think of like how there's familiarity in the schedule rather than just a bunch of random home and home games, or even like the Power Four games. Where I wonder how much of a draw Power Four games are if you are a Group of Five program and you're losing all those Power Four games, because it's cool to say to a 17, 18-year-old recruit, like you'll play against four SEC teams a year or four Power Four teams a year. But I feel like we don't give 17 and 18-year-olds as much credit as they deserve for them saying like, yeah, but we're not going to win any of those games. Like I imagine that's a thought process that went into a lot of UMass recruits if they had been given that line. So I think just the better competition should help. But like you said, I mean, the way that we're looking at this is different than most of the other teams in this league. Just kind of shows how bleak the situation has gotten in UMass, and I just hope it gets better, really. But at least they get Sacramento State in California. That's kind of a bowl game. I mean, even though it's in September and not in November, where the weather's bad in Amherst, like at least there's some relief there.
Yeah, absolutely. That takes us to our final team in this breakdown, the defending champions, the Western Michigan Broncos. What are your first thoughts when you look at their schedule?
Yeah, so first thought is it's crazy that the Michigan game ends up being played in Michigan anyways after the song and dance we went through, with that one almost being in Germany. But that's the first thing I'm going to say with that. I think Western Michigan, along with Toledo, I think if there were two playoff worthy schedules, if a team were to run the table against their Group 5 competition, Western Michigan and Toledo have the most playoff friendly schedules for, I guess, if they were to end up with a 12-1 record, if all went right, because they got Boise State on the. I mean, that's mainly they got Boise State at home in Kalamazoo. That's huge. The only drawback to that is they have Rice the week before with their option offense, where you're gonna have to prep for the angles, the motion, and everything that offense has under Scott Abell. I still think that they'll win that game. I still think that Western Michigan will beat Rice in that game and get payback for the 2008 Texas Bowl, one of the more unique bowl games in recent memory, both those teams playing at Reliant Field. But I think if they can win Boise State, and I think a win against Boise State is more realistic than people might think, because I think the way that things are now in the Group of 5, I don't think Boise State has as much of a lead, or has as much of a, I'm trying to think of the word, but I don't think Boise State is that far ahead of the rest of the Group of 5. I think it's easier for schools like Western Michigan to catch up with Boise State on a bad day, get Boise State on a bad day, and just honestly beat them. We saw UTEP do it. I was at that game in 2022 when UTEP caught Boise State on a bad day. I think more often than not, you're going to get a Boise State team that goes maybe 9-3 in the regular season, 10-2. I think years like 2024 are going to be the exception and not the norm. And so, with that being said, though, Boise State is still a name brand. And so, I think a lot of what happens with the playoff when people look at Group of 5 schools is, do you have that name brand win? And so if Western Michigan can get that name brand win against Boise State, if they lose to just Michigan and end up 12-1, and the American has an off year, which it's more realistic than you may think, seeing the American have an off year, I think we're looking at a playoff contender. The only thing is, though, is Central Michigan, Toledo, Miami, Ohio are still on the schedule. All those must-see TV games are still on the schedule for Western Michigan. But if they're able to run the table against a Group of 5 competition, you're looking at a playoff team. Now, do they? I think it's tough. They do have Jalen Buckley, but they do lose some pieces on defense. I believe. So it's tough, but I really like the schedule for Western Michigan. Getting Miami of Ohio, like we talked about before in this long podcast, that one is a must-see game. Getting that one at home is huge. And we could have two games. We could have essentially a MAC playoff, I feel like, in that final week, with Toledo playing Ohio and Miami playing Western Michigan, where it could be, win and you're in for 3 of those 4 teams, all four of them if Ohio exceeds expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean this schedule sets up very well. I think it's a really cool schedule for Western Michigan, and definitely that Boise State game, Broncos versus Broncos in Kalamazoo is going to be really cool. And that being at home, I think is what really helps Western Michigan out a lot. Like Western Michigan lost in overtime to North Texas last year. North Texas was a game away from the college football playoff. That goes to show how well and that was early in the year. That was before Western Michigan really rounded into form. So you can really see where they can handle this. And again, like the schedule does not like you play most of your tough opponents at home. The only challenging part is obviously that back-to-back road trip there with your rival Central Michigan. That is going to be an awesome rivalry game. I expect Mount Pleasant is going to be rocking for that one. And then you got to go play Toledo in the Glass Bowl the week after. That is going to be the key stretch. Western Michigan, you're probably looking to try to at least get a split there. Losing both could wreck their season in one fell swoop. So that's definitely going to be a very interesting one. And of course, I very much enjoy like these group of five like home and home series. Like Western Michigan to Rice, definitely a very unique matchup there, and I think that one's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that like you said, the Central Michigan stretch against Toledo, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to repeat. But you never know, really. I mean, I think that's one thing with the MAC, I guess, and that's a good way. I guess as we hit this last team, is like, man, maybe things come together again for Western Michigan where they do, beat Central Michigan and they do beat Toledo on the road in that 2-game stretch. But man, it's just interesting too. Like I just can't believe like how many teams. Like the more we talked about these teams, the more I can talk myself into like there being like more title contenders. Like I can just talk myself into like these paths, and that's just true with Western Michigan as well too. Like I'm just excited. Like this made me even more excited beyond UMass for the MAC schedule because there's just so much we were just able to siphon in this time. I mean, yeah, like that's more so a MAC wide comment than just Western Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of a good way that we can put a bow on this this is why this conference is so entertaining to watch. Like it anyone can rise up and become a contender. There's just so much parity and looking at this conference in the preseason, there's a lot that we could talk ourselves into of a lot of these teams. They have pieces around that could get it done. And yeah, it's going to be a very exciting season for MACtion.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm looking forward to it, and we even got like we mentioned a lot the twist of Sacramento State. I think that just adds flavor to it. All stuff aside, with the existential stuff with the MAC, like on the field, it should be a really amazing project.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thank you for joining the show today. Definitely was a lot of fun talking about breaking down everything with the schedule. I know, similar to me, you really love diving into these schedules and just, talking about like what each matchup means and the history around a lot of them. Definitely a lot of awesome nuggets like Mississippi Valley State and the 2008 Texas Bowl got mentioned. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me a lot of places. So I mean, first and foremost, like I do most of my writing with Redshirt Sports. That's I always forget because we don't have like James doesn't have the exact Redshirt Sports. I'm looking at it right now. That's at _ Redshirt Sports if you want to follow there for the stories that not just me but other great writers on the site. Like we got Gino Leone covering Youngstown State pretty extensively. He does a great job with the Penguins. I learned a lot about that program that I never thought I would. Got my friend Jacob from CFB Red Zone just writing just whole scale analytical pieces on the FBS. Does an amazing job out there. CFB Red Zone too with what he's trying to launch as well at Redshirt Sports. So you can see me there. You can find me there. Of course, By the Belt, the Hustle Belt successor. You can find me writing about the MAC. Working currently on some pre-draft stuff. We're just compiling the numbers. It's just been tough lately. Some of the stuff I've just been busy with personal life, whether it just be like family visiting and stuff like that, prepping for that. just being a dad and whatnot. So that's coming out slowly but surely. And then finally at As for Football, pretty much I'm just so glad to be part of that team, being a lifelong Army fan, just covering that team weekly, being the self-proclaimed American Conference fanboy as a counter to Dave Portnoy as a Big Ten fanboy. That's been fun lately. You can catch me saying I'm proud to be in the American instead of proud to be an American. I'm proud to be in the American. So you can just find me a variety of places. Then you can find me, of course, on X, just chopping it up when I can at Omar Rashon Borja. I created that in high school. I didn't know what else to make my handle, but my name, it's pretty rare. Those are the places you can find me.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely make sure you give Omar a follow if you don't already. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe our channel as well. We are here on YouTube, very active over on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. We're also on the other social media networks as well. And of course, we are very much prioritizing the podcast edition. So usually when we have live shows, you'll see the podcast air the day after. So you'll stay tuned if you're watching this later on, be sure to like and I believe it's leave a review on Apple, Spotify, is usually their setup there. So be sure to, and maybe if you're watching in a video, next time you're like, I want to see Justin's face. You can tune into the podcast portion on Apple or Spotify as well. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful night. And of course, enjoy some action.